I think it's important that we share, that we communicate, that we are open, and that we work together to achieve.
Because of what wellness is about, so is to spread the message.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so very much for joining us on the World Spa and Wellness online conference, broadcast all over the world, multicast on Facebook right now, but very soon also on YouTube with the help of the 4 teams of the Professional Beauty Group in the UK, in the GCC, in South Africa, and in India. It's a pleasure to be sharing in this historical moment insights from operators, from experts today, and in the next 3 days, going to see about 70 speakers in 15 panels, and one started already this morning with Emma Barron in the GCC. As hospitality, spa, and wellness operators are currently rethinking their value proposition to be relevant again, resetting their objectives, re-engineering their menus, and re-evaluating their finances, preparing eventually for reopening. Today's session is going to be about sharing insights on what spas can learn from hot springs post-COVID-19 SOPs from Australia, Austria, and Central Europe. My name is Jean-Guy de Gabriac. I'll be your host today as founder of Tip Touch International, but also of World Wellness Weekend partnering this event. Today on the panel, we have Charles Davidson, founder, chairman, creative director of Peninsula Hot Springs, one of the leading facilities in Australia, also the chair of the Hot Springs Initiative of the Global Wellness Institute. We have Dr. Mark Cohen, founder of Extreme Wellness Institute and board member of the Global Wellness Summit. Mark Hennebrey, chairman of Ensana Health Spas, and also vice chairman of Danubius Hotel Group based in the UK, and Thomas Bauer, chief operating officer of VAMED, Vitality World in Austria. Thank you so very much, gentlemen, for joining us today and for this hour that we're going to spend with you. Let's talk about safety first, because it's on everybody's mind. Everyone having a sauna, a hammam, steam room, swimming pool, hot tub, and because it's very much linked to the business of hot springs, but also of hydrothermal experiences. Mark Cohen, please tell us about the document you're working on for the Global Wellness Institute and your findings about the safety of those hydrothermal experiences, please.
Well, I've just published an article on, which is actually online now, open access, called Turning Up the Heat on COVID-19, and it documents the scientific evidence for using heat as a treatment for respiratory viral infections. And we're just producing another one for the Hot Spring Initiative of the Global Wellness Institute, making a case that hydrothermal facilities need to be considered as essential services and not, rather than be the last thing that opens up, need to be the first thing that opens up. In fact, they should never be closed, because hydrothermal experiences aren't just safe, they're actually one of the best ways to treat and mitigate the effects of any respiratory virus. So yeah, there's a really strong case that you know, these facilities need to be considered essential services. And you know, when I went, I've done a lot of, I mean, I've been in this field for a long time. I've been a doctor for 30 years, been a professor for more than half of that time. And I've done a lot of work in this field, but even in the last few months, I've been learning a lot and in producing these articles. And all the way through evolution, heat has been used to treat viral infections. So heat is used by fish, by insects, by birds, by reptiles, by mammals to actually increase their body temperature to treat a viral infection. And all mammals have the ability to create fever in response to virus. So raising your body temperature is one of the essential ways of coping with the infection. And that can be done in a sauna, can be done in a hot pool, can be done in a steam room, anything that raises, can be done with exercise. But anything that raises your body temperature 1 to 2 degrees will improve your both innate and acquired immune system. So that's a really fundamental, very safe, very tried and true 600 million years of evolution document that. There's also a lot of research, historically and traditionally, the cultures that have very cold climates, the Scandinavian, Baltic, Russia, Japan, they've been doing hot and cold hydrothermal therapy for generations. And there's research from epidemiological evidence that's come out mainly from Finland. They've studied 2,000 men over 20 years that shows that people who have regular saunas are much less likely to get viral infection, respiratory infection, or pneumonia, but also they're less likely to die of any cause. So yeah, there's a lot of evidence to say that these are effective, but in terms of the safety, well, a virus cannot reproduce in water. It needs human cells to reproduce. So it's not like a bacteria that can fester in water, reproduce, and then become more contagious. Viruses won't reproduce in water. They're killed very rapidly by UV light. They're also killed or deactivated very rapidly, because viruses actually technically aren't alive, by heat. And with the coronaviruses, they're amongst these enveloped respiratory viruses that have this lipid or outer coating that at the 55 degrees, just like coconut oil will turn from solid to liquid once it hits a certain temperature, they just melt. So 55 degrees, 60 degrees is about the temperature where the viruses cannot survive. And these temperatures are easily met inside a sauna. So, in sauna facilities, there's no need to social distance. There's no effective transmission of a virus at high temperatures. And at the lower temperatures, even in a steam room, an infrared sauna, hot pools, a lot of that depends on the ambient air, because your first line of defense against a viral infection is the mucosa of your nose. And if that's maintained so that the mucus is nice and fluid and the cilia, the little things can keep beating like sort of wheat on a windswept field, that keeps the mucus moving, and that will naturally capture viruses, present them to your immune cells, which line the mucosa of your nose. And then those immune cells will sort of take their number, make up an antibody, and then those viruses will be disposed of before you ever get sick. And maintaining the integrity of your nasal mucosa is really important. So and a lot of places, when you're bathing, you naturally have warm, humid conditions. So if things are very cold and non-humid, that's when your nasal mucosa dries out and the viruses can penetrate. So there's a lot of, I can go on, but there's these documents, I'm happy to share them. There's a lot of evidence to say that not only are they safe, they're probably, certainly a sauna is the safest place you could possibly be.
It is with the heat, and so many times we hear the sauna people say that they are healthy people and happy people because it has so many beneficial physiological impacts on their lives with the cardiac system, with the central nervous system, the immune system. But let's go to you, Charles, for a minute, because I'd like to hear about your very strong safety first approach that you have at Peninsula Hot Springs, especially about those hydrothermal experiences. How do you manage that to keep both guests and staff safe?
Certainly. Before any of our guests arrive, we have a protocol, which is basically to ask them to fill out a form and to confirm how they were feeling. And that happens also when they arrive at the reception. Now, mind you, this is a protocol we haven't actually reopened yet, so this is something we have set in place, but it hasn't been implemented yet. So we also will be testing the temperature of people just to make sure they don't have a fever, even if they're not aware of their condition. So we're trying to stop people coming into the door if they are actually unwell. But in the facility itself, we are practicing, we will be practicing social distancing. So a certain level of that, and we are very fortunate because we have quite a large facility. We have 41 different bathing experiences. And so we will be separating areas out into larger pools, which will have limited numbers of people in them. And then we will be doing a lot of private experiences as well. So people will be able to go into their own pool with their own family, by themselves, or with their family and their own group. So, that's a way which we are integrating a sort of a nicer experience for customers and guests, and dealing with their own anxiety. Even if, and I have read Mark's papers, and they sound very, sounds like it's a very evidence-based, clear messaging that saunas and hot pools aren't dangerous places of themselves. In fact, they are very safe places, but that still doesn't allay or make our customers feel totally safe, because they have a certain level of anxiety. So we do want to also take into account people's perceptions and try and improve the experience.
Thank you, Charles. Let's turn to you, Tom, because you're one of the largest operators of hot springs and thermal facilities in Austria with VAMED. What are the safety measures you're implementing for reopening?
Well, I think the most important factor we are trying to encourage all our guests is actually to go away from this paternalism. We had to back to this individual responsibility. As far as we understand, just only in Austria, we have about 9 million guests in our hot springs facilities, more than 40. I think you can double that for Germany, and most probably for Hungary as well, looking at Central Europe. I think it's really important that you give the most time of using digital where possible, but the least necessary for the guests by having the interaction with them. What does this mean? We have set up a booking system, as you might know it if you go for cinemas, for example, where you can book your chairs and know exactly where you're going to sit, or in our cases, where you're going to use your sun loungers. And you can do this all online, so to say. So in other words, the interaction when you're coming is from the very, very beginning guaranteed that it's almost as touchless as possible. And I'm very happy what Mark and just Charles said, because I fully agree on that, looking into the self-responsibility and the individual responsibility, and coming up with ideas and solutions of creating safety first. And honestly, safety first will for sure be the new normal in whatever we're gonna do. It has to be with a smile, because we are these places where we want to create happiness. And I think it was Mark Hannaby who just once said this, that happiness is the most important platform to create a strong immune system, put it this way. So this is, if you ask me, in our hot spring facilities, the biggest thing we have to provide and make sure by all means we're gonna provide to our customers, that we invite them to join in and living the safety first issues as you just mentioned them.
Thank you very much. It seems that in those past 2 months, the rate with which our industry has digitalized itself and its functions in terms of guest services has increased extremely rapidly. This is something we'll go deeper into later into this panel, but already you are enabling people, Tom, online to choose where they're going to sit, just like you would book your seat in a cinema theater.
Absolutely right, yeah.
Wow, fantastic. Mark, I don't want to leave you out of this introduction about safety elements. What are you implementing with Ensana all over Central Europe?
We're actually starting with our staff, so that when all of our staff come back to work for the first time, when we're reopening the health spa hotels, they're all having virus checks prior to starting work, to give them the comfort and the confidence of knowing that they're healthy when they're starting work. Clearly, they can still pick up an infection later on, but at least we've got a starting point, a base from which to work from. And we're also asking our guests when they arrive to go through virus checks and temperature checks on a regular basis. Again, if we can try and sort of intervene at any point if we find that somebody actually does have a virus, and then obviously isolate them.
Charles, are you planning on testing your team on a monthly basis, on a weekly basis? What's the procedure that you're going to follow in accordance with the Australian government recommendations?
Well, currently there aren't specific Australian government recommendations. The Australian government is encouraging anybody who has any of the base symptoms to be going to testing facilities, and every region now has testing facilities. So our state, just in the last couple of weeks, have done about 150,000 tests, and they are continuing a very high, what they consider to be a high level of testing. And hence the numbers are really coming down in the country. Our staff, I think, and we haven't yet fully decided this, we still have an senior executive meeting to go to make a final decision. But I think we will be testing all staff initially, and then they will be testing on a daily basis in terms of temperature as they arrive, and then having a self-check as well. So everybody, hopefully, as Thomas was alluding to, will take on self-responsibility. So if they do feel at all unwell, that they will call in. There'll be no special prizes for people who come to work feeling unwell, which might have been the case in the past, where people are being tough and just keep on working through. That won't be the practice anymore.
Thank you. Tom, speaking of what you're doing with your team, you've created 2 dedicated training managers to train your teams. Can you walk us in what you're implementing?
More than happy to, more than happy. In fact, we are planning in Austria, in Jala, that on the 29th of May, we will reopen our facilities. As of this weekend, the 15th, all the restaurants and cafes will go public again and open. And one of the most dedicated targets or topics we want to have addressed is actually to train all our people on COVID-19 issues, and there are several. So on the one hand, we have installed 2 trainings managers, trained the trainings managers for the last months on all the regulations and rules and everything we know already. And we are assuming, since we're opening on the 29th, will come and get live. So they prepare e-tickets, they prepare everything for e-learning, because it's not only that we train them now, the 1,600 colleagues of mine, and give them a certificate so they feel, armed and comfortable in regards of how they're going to interact with each other, but as well how they're going to work as coaches or explainers or I would just say sometimes as teachers to the guests as well, on a charming way certainly, and not with a raising finger. These are the 2 elements, but on the other hand as well, preparing e-learning possibilities, so that each employee on his mobile is actually being retrained and retrained and retrained, because this is more or less something which I just said will become the new normal. It will gonna be with us for the next most probably weeks, months, and maybe years. And one thing for sure, I think as we're all talking about our industry on balneology or hot springs, I think we have already by now in all our countries very, very, very high regulations on that, to assure that everything is in order. So for us, actually, it's just doing the same as we did, but taking more responsibility of that everybody is aware of it and can see actually and somehow feel what we are doing behind the scenes, but making sure and giving you the comfort you had already in the past.
Thank you very much, Tom. Before we jump to Mark Hennebree and talk about insurance and risk management, especially with large operations, Mark Cohen, one quick question, because there's so much going back and forth with information, what's real, what's not real. The testing kits, will they be available? Are they reliable? Some people say 40% of the kits will not be reliable. And even if you get tested today, and are not positive today, you could still be carrying, and you could be contagious, but not really symptomatic right now. And from one day to the next, it could happen again. And one person contracting COVID, you think you're immune, but you could catch it again. So what's the facts behind that?
Well, a lot of the facts we don't know yet. But I'll be very cautious about using either the real-time PCR testing or even the antibody testing. Every test you do has false positives and false negatives. So that's not an assurance. And it also takes time for those tests to come back. So I think it's a much better metric is to look at body temperature and, reasonably, I mean, if people run into their, from their car even, they can raise their temperature a little bit. But if you're a temperature over 38 degrees, or if you're symptomatic, I think they're much better measures than a laboratory test using a real-time PCR, which has very poor reliability. And you wouldn't want to exclude someone from work because they've tested positive when it's a false positive. And there is severe deficiencies in these sort of tests when you're relying on that. And also, there's more than one virus. We all have viruses all the time. Viruses are an essential part of our microbiome, a part of our health. And the symptoms, whether it's COVID-19 or it's the influenza, or there's dozens of other viruses you can then pass on, symptoms and a fever are much better indicators than any laboratory test that's currently in place. And they're much more general. So they'll account for influenza and COVID-19 and other diseases, not just COVID-19. So I think that's an important point.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. Mark Hennebree, if you can unmute yourself, because I'd love to hear from you. What happens if a member of staff contracts COVID-19 and then argues that he caught it on the property and then files for compensation for a work-related illness? How do you manage that as risk management and regarding insurance?
Well, it's always risk management is always an ongoing battle, and there's no 100% perfect answer to any of that. You do everything you can. You put all your reasonable measures in place. You take all the precautions you can with your staff and your guests to keep them healthy. Obviously, if somebody decides to take a lawsuit, they're clearly going to have to prove that they contracted it in the workplace and that I think would be extraordinarily difficult, because again, the virus is prevalent in many different places, and whether it's direct contact or community transmission or wherever, I think it would be extraordinarily difficult to actually bring a successful claim. May not stop anybody from trying it, and clearly we hope that by showing that we're taking reasonable measures, that people will have comfort and confidence in that.
Thank you, Mark. Charles, can you tell us about the outbreak response plan you're putting in place at Peninsula Hot Springs in Australia?
The outbreak response plan is really facing things by the facts that have come up. So we try not to hide anything, and try and deal with every fact as they come. So rather than running and hiding from things, what we'll do is really show all of the protocols that we have in place. We keep records on a regular basis. And then what we can do is we go back in and check every record, check if we had made something wrong or we hadn't followed a protocol, hadn't followed the procedures that we had in place. And that's a self-check. And then the other side is communication. So how do we communicate that? And again, that comes to our senior executives. We have 2 or 3 spokespeople in the organisation who are able to speak on behalf, which is really our most senior executives. So we try and make it very clear in our organisation that spokesperson has to come through just a couple of people. Otherwise, what can happen is that your communication can be unclear, and that's when trouble starts to happen, when you have mixed messaging. So it's dealing with the facts, check the facts, and then communicate through a single channel.
Thank you. Safety is definitely paramount right now. It's on everybody's mind, and definitely because of the media overexposure on the news, health, virus, it's on everybody's mind. But making our industry relevant will not just be by making it safe or talking about safety. It's also about refocusing on the wow factors, the meaningful benefits of using spas, hydrothermal experiences, and of course, hot springs. Mark Hennebree, please tell us about the elements that you are preparing to boost the guest experiences. We've heard from Tom that it's possible to book online for a specific lounger somewhere. What are you going to do around the booking process?
Well, like everybody, we're becoming much more digital in everything that we do, rather than manual. I think one of the issues we've seen with a lot of customers and consumers all around the world is people who've had their travel plans cancelled, and the issue of getting their deposits and refunds. And so clearly wanting somebody to book again in the future, we need to give them confidence that should their plans be disrupted again, that they can then get any deposits back. So making those cancellation policies flexible, making them sort of low level and not rigid, so that people go, I'll make my booking, I'll come and visit your spa, but actually if something happens, I'll cancel and I'm not at risk. Ultimately, it may mean that we end up losing some business, but I think on the whole, it gives our guests comfort that we have their interests at heart.
Indeed. Charles, you did mention in the introduction that with the specific layout of Peninsula Hot Springs and the many 40 plus experiences you offer with the baths, the saunas, the ice rooms, and we'll talk about beautiful water in a second with Mark. Tell us about the private experiences you will be organizing, and especially about Get Back in Touch.
Yes. Well, what we've tried to do is reimagine our business. Now, we've for quite some time been a very busy spa, very busy hot spring facility, and it means that people have been free to go anywhere they like. But pre-COVID-19, people were wanting some more private experiences. So a positive, which has actually driven out of this whole experience, is that we have developed these new programs where people can come travel with their friends or with their guests, with their group, and they can be having their own private pools in different parts of the facility. We book them, they can have their own private sauna or steam room for a fixed time, so 15 minutes to 30 minutes for their own group. We have various locations. There's actually 31 locations on the property where we have dining experiences where people can have their own dining with their group. So not with other people, they're either private domes, private glamping rooms, we have private other private spaces, so they can be delivered their meals. And so really, we have a single entry in and a single entry out of the facility. So we're not doing a crossover. So we minimize any opportunity for crossovers around the experience. Now, the Get Back in Touch opportunity is one where basically couples who, we're teaching couples massage, because at the beginning when we first open, we're not going to be able to open our spa centre. So doing a single touch massage will be probably the last thing that we can open. And we will open it when we can, but we also feel that there'll be some reticence that people will have being massaged by somebody they don't know. So what we're introducing is spa training courses for couples. So we're teaching people to massage each other. We have a large training room that can normally fit about 14 massage tables in the training room. Now we're going to halve that number to have social distancing, and so we can do up to 7 or 8 couples and being taught by a massage instructor. The massage instructor, in fact, brings their partner, so who is one of our therapists will bring their partner, and they will demonstrate on their partner, and then all of the couples will be learning to massage each other. Another option they do have is they will be able to, after they've done the learning for 1.5 to 2 hours, then they will also be able to book a private massage room for up to an hour to practice their massage on each other. So these rooms, which might otherwise be empty, can be used as private treatment rooms. And so we provide the towels and the sanitation and everything else beforehand, and then people can hire a room. So we get a utilisation of our spa treatment rooms, even if we can't have the spa fully operational. So that's a way of helping couples get back in touch.
It's very clever. It's putting in together the learning curve, the proximity, the occupation of your treatment rooms. It's excellent. Mark, tell us a little bit more about beautiful water before we go into, is it safe to receive a massage, and will people need to receive a massage with gloves? But before, beautiful water.
Sure. So I've been working with Peninsula Hot Springs, but also with Glen Ivy Hot Springs in the US. And we actually announced it the day before they closed on March 22nd, which was World Water Day, that Peninsula Hot Springs have now installed water filters at all their drinking fountains and water bottle refill stations. And the idea is to have really upgrade the quality of water that people are hydrating themselves with. Because whenever you have hydrothermal experiences, and we actually did a survey some years back, over 4,000 people we surveyed at Peninsula Hot Springs, and we found about a third of them, over 30%, were getting faint, dizziness, or lightheaded. And that's mainly because they're getting dehydrated, because they're outside, they're getting hot, they're not drinking enough water. So upgrading the quality of the water. And so I've created a company now, which we're doing extreme wellness water filters, and beautiful water is the result, which is water that's filtered, but it's also structured, balanced, and blessed. So it's really making consciousness in the water. And then if you're really encouraging people to rehydrate and providing that for free. So it means that a wellness facility can then stop buying plastic water bottles. And if you get into that, there's 500 billion plastic water bottles produced every year and thrown away. It's a million every minute. And for a wellness facility, plastic water bottles should not be there. So the solution for that is high quality point of use filtration, and filtration where you've really upgraded the quality of the water. So you're really encouraging people to fill up their own water bottle. They have one bottle they can carry around, or everywhere they go, there are drinking fountains. They can get very high quality water. So if they're in the sauna, they're in the pools, they're outside, they can hydrate with the highest quality water. And I think that's a trend that I'd love to see through wellness facilities, to get rid of plastic water bottles and include very high quality, doesn't have to be my filters, but very high quality point of use filtration, and really encourage people, and to provide that for free. So people are encouraged to hydrate with quality water.
Thank you, Mark. There's lots of questions coming about beauty treatment strategies, about providing massage with gloves. But before we get into that, let's stick just a second with hot and cold and the extreme wellness practices that you preach, Mark. How will people be able to do that, to experience that? Can they still be free to move from a sauna to a cold plunge? How will that take place?
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at the physiological and the cellular research about the effects of heat stress on your body, so heat will actually enhance your innate immune system and your acquired immune system. It helps you build antibodies, helps activate your immune cells. But the effect of heat is actually enhanced when you alternate heat with cold. And it's not just about immune system, it's about the vascular system. So when you're in the heat, the blood goes to the outside of the body. And it doesn't, not with exercise, the blood goes to the outside, but you're producing waste products. If you're relaxing in a pool or a sauna and you're heating your body, the blood goes to the outside of the body. It takes away those waste products. Then when you go into the cold, that blood is pushed away from the outside of the body to the inside of the body. So it goes through your liver and your kidneys. It causes a diuresis, so it makes you pass urine, and it actually filters all that blood. So that's a really effective way to detoxify. It also, there are proteins called heat shock proteins that help your body adapt to heat. They're also released when your body adapts to cold. So hot and cold is, and that's tradition. I mean, it's been known for generations that, you have a sauna, then you go outside in the cold and you jump in the lake or in the snow and you cool down, and you do that a few times. So there's a basic protocol which we talk about, which is a rinse, hot, cold, rest, repeat. So it's important to have the rest in between the hot and cold. But in terms of the safety, I don't think there's any additional safety issue when going from a sauna to a cold shower or a cold plunge. Although a lot of facilities outside of Europe don't have as much emphasis on the cold plunge. And I think people do need coaching. And I've been to actually all of these guys' facilities, but I remember, Tom, you had fantastic sauna coaches, which really educate people about how to use the sauna and how to use the cold and have proper cold experiences, which are chilled, not just ambient air. And, in other warm locations, ambient temperature might be 18, 20 degrees, which is really not enough cold enough to get that vasoconstriction. So I certainly encourage people to have those hot and cold. But I think people do need education. And I think hydrothermal facilities can be real sources of education for the staff, but for the community, and then encourage people to do it at home. Because you can do that just with a hot and cold shower. But until you've had a coach to take you through that, and you've done that in a hydrothermal facility, you won't have the confidence to do that at home. So I think that's a really important education role that these facilities can play. And then that helps boost the overall immunity for the community. And then that helps, reduce the effect of any future pandemics, as well as any other future illnesses they may have.
All right. Thank you. So quick question about, is it safe to receive a massage with a therapist that would not be wearing gloves, or will be wearing gloves be mandatory? What's your take on this as a doctor?
Oh, the thought of having a massage with gloves makes me shudder. You can't catch COVID-19 through your skin. It won't go through your epidermis. It has to go into a nasal mucosa cell, which has this ACE2 receptor. So you're not going to transmit the virus through your skin. Yet you do transmit a lot of therapeutic benefit through direct skin contact. So if that is, restricted by using gloves, you're actually going to lose a lot of the benefit from massage. And we already live in a very low touch society. So, touch is very restricted, and a lot of people, the elderly and a lot of people who are isolated don't have physical human touch. So these facilities, spas and hydrothermal centers, when you have a massage, is one of the few places where you can actually have direct human touch and human connection. And I would hate to see any regulation, and there's certainly no evidence to say that that's going to reduce the impact or reduce, cross-infectivity. And in fact, the physical touch actually enhances immunity, just the fact that you're actually being touched. So I would really discourage people to try and start using gloves for a massage. Again, it reduces the overall effect, but I don't think it's going to add any benefit in terms of infection.
Thank you, Mark. We're still 20 minutes into this panel, and there's so many topics I'd like to jump on. But Tom, you did mention something when we were preparing this panel about biohacking and about the physiological benefits of your treatments. Can you explain what you're implementing with biohacking?
More than happy, but please allow me just quickly say thank you to my fellow colleagues here, because it's just so inspiring what I'm hearing here, and understanding that, if it's Australia, America, Europe, or Asia, doesn't really matter. I think the concerns and the going forward is equally the same, and lots of great ideas. And thank you, Mark, for sharing the insights as well, because it speaks out of my heart. I think it was Mahatma Gandhi who said, be the change you want to see. And I don't want to have massages or the change with gloves. So let us be in charge by ourselves, and then we're not going to have this in the future. But coming back to your question, Jean-Guy, yes, I think, and I don't want to go into the details of biohacking, and maybe some people might say biohacking, this is something really suspicious. What I'm talking is, and I try to make it very simple. When, for example, you listen or your wife listens to the most lovely music you can imagine, all of a sudden your heart cheers up, and all of a sudden your mood turns into positive. If you come home from work and you're gonna put yourself a hot bath, candles, nice music, nice smell, all of a sudden you totally change your mood, and so you biohack actually your own way of thinking, way of living. And I think we, as our hot spring facilities, but most probably that counts as well for a fitness center and any spa and whatever on this planet, should become this positive places, where you can be encouraged and where you are giving the on-hand informations, what makes it easy for you, hack yourself, so to say, in a positive way. And what I mean with biohacking is simply just to understand that with that, you can strengthen a lot of your immune systems and a lot of the way of your thinking. And this already creates more cheeriness, more happiness. And looking at this, nature plays a big role as well. And the majority of all our places are placed in wonderful locations and in wonderful nature areas. Or if you're not exactly there, then at least the travel to it bring you that along as well. And just quoting on a note of a person I think everybody knows as well, when he said, he sang his song of "Start with the Man in the Mirror," then this is for me the equal quote of, if you want to make this change, especially post COVID-19, of have the world becoming a normal world again, you know, then you have to start by yourself. And this is what we try to give in all our properties, along of meaning with biohacking. I hope this brought it across a little bit better what we understand with that.
Yeah, thank you. Before we jump with Mark Hennebree about how Ensana's properties are planning on helping guests and demonstrate to guests how they can be their own health managers, and how Charles is turning his property into an immune boosting facility. Mark, a word or 1 or 2 sentences about biohacking?
Yeah, I just want to talk, because I've been teaching people how to do ice baths and saunas, and I've come up with what I call the 10 hacks to relax. And these are 10 things you can do. It's almost to relax on demand. And it's very simple. It's touch all your fingers, wiggle your toes, soften your stomach, breathe through your nose. Sigh, smile, swallow, sing, flutter your eyelids, and focus within. And all of those things, it's actually, my friend of mine has turned that into a song and an animation. I can share the link for that. But all of those things turn on your parasympathetic nervous system. So they do the opposite of the fight and flight. They turn on your rest and digest. So these are things, you know, when you go into an ice bath, you want to convince your body you're relaxed. So these are little biohacks that we can teach people when they come to our facilities, and they can stay with them for the rest of their life, and they can continue doing that and improve their health and their immunity and their control over their own physiology, which I think that's really a valuable resource that we can provide.
Very practical, Mark. Thank you. It's true that sometimes terms like biohacking seem very complicated, but it can be very accessible. And it's very empowering to hear all of you guys, because it's not just about opening venues and having saunas and pools ready for people. You're very inspirational. You're very empowering. Before we go to Charles, Mark, tell us, because 50% of your clients are returning guests. It's amazing. How are you going to inspire them and educate them to become their health managers?
Well, yeah, we have guests coming back to us frequently. More than 50% of our guests are return guests, which is wonderful. But again, you know, similar to what Tom is saying about, you know, if we want to see change, we have to start within ourselves. And so we're now working with our guests to, you know, when you go home, these are the things that you can continue to do at home, because we do need to take responsibility for our own personal health, you know, but also that sense that when you go home, you're part of a community, and that power of community for me is something that is so strong. And even today, you know, all the people that are sitting and watching and listening, you know, this community and the power of that community and the knowledge that we can take home with us, because it isn't just the hour or the day or the 2 days or a week that you spend somewhere. It's the other 300 plus days that I think will truly make the difference as to what we're doing. Interestingly, some of our hotels are beginning to open already, and a lot of the guests they're telling us they don't want to see the plexiglass screens. They're telling us they don't want to see the mouth guards. You know, okay, we're not doing the gloves anyway on the massages, clearly not. But they want to, in a way, they want to, if you like, the old world to come back, you know. And clearly, we're in the hospitality business. We welcome our guests. You know, it's very difficult to welcome somebody with something in front of your face. And so we're desperate to go, and the high touch that Mark Cohen was talking about, you know, standing 2 meters away is not high touch. You want to go and hug your guest. So hopefully we'll be able to do that soon.
Thank you. Charles, I'd like to turn to you now, because as one of the judges of the World Spa and Wellness Awards, and as a consultant for the past 19 years, so many times I've visited properties, whether big or small, luxurious or affordable. And so many times there's a sauna here, and there's a door, and there's a bucket, and there's no real information, just safety procedures, you know, warnings just for insurance purposes. If you're pregnant, you know, don't use. If you have cardiac problems, don't use. From what I hear in this panel, all of you are really rethinking your businesses to be very empowering and educational, so that people fully understand the benefits of the experiences. Tell us about the information guide that you are publishing to turn Peninsula Hot Springs into an immune boosting facility?
Sure. Really, it is a guide to show people how to use our facility with consciousness, and it's really knowing what they're coming into. So it's basically starting with the very essence of health and well-being, which is looking at our air and water and food. So we're going to our menus. We're looking at we're introducing air meters, just so people can see that the quality of the air that we've got is good. The water, as Mark Cohen had said, that we have introduced water filters, which we're putting on each individual tap, and people have got the ability to fill up their own water bottles, free filtered water from taps, with the filter happening at the tap level. We've introduced some new showers, thermal showers, which are thermal hot spring showers, but we're infusing eucalyptus oil into them. So they're aromatherapy, antibacterial, particularly antibacterial, sort of antiviral. Mark can talk a lot more about it, but showers. So people can turn on showers and have a eucalyptus shower, essential oil shower. We're doing more and more classes, which is about mindfulness. We've introduced a section of our place where we have music and do music concerts. And there's a great connection between mindfulness, music, and health and well-being. So being in a relaxed state, which helps boost your immune system. It's the same with sleep. It's a very old technique that's been done throughout Europe for a long time. Any of the old bathhouses where you go to Baden-Baden or nearly anywhere, they've got great locations where people can sleep. So after you've been into a bath, so good for your immune system to keep up and get good level of sleep. And these are things that people can take home as well. Joy and laughter. People being able to spend time with their friends, and in these private bars, it gives them more private time where they can really spend time in conversation, in joy and laughter with other people. And that community is now more than ever is going to be important. Coming out of this sort of isolation period, people are going to be needing to get back in touch. So they're just a few things that we've brought into the facility. Also, at most of the facilities we do have a guide and some information that talks about how to use this particular facility and what is it good for. So, yeah.
So it's really purposeful. We have about 10 more minutes, and I really want to touch on the economics of this situation. We've covered the health part, the safety part. We've shown that not only is it useful, but it is meaningful, purposeful to use heat, water with the safety measures necessary. It can even be entertaining, it can be fun, it can be empowering. But the question for this last part, is it economically viable to reopen some venues? And I'll ask the question first to Mark Hennebree and then to Tom. Some venues or groups are really looking forward to reopening fast. Others are just really waiting and will reopen in stages. What's your policy on this, Mark, within Sana?
We're starting to reopen. We opened 2 properties, one in the Czech Republic and one in Slovakia last week. And this week and the following weeks, we will very slowly and cautiously open up properties. A lot of it really is dependent on guest demand. There are still many travel restrictions around Europe. Borders are still closed. So we're dependent on domestic guests to come and visit. But at the same time, some of our properties, we know we won't reopen until next spring. And that is the sad reality of
next spring, next year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
What about you, Tom? Financial results, objectives?
Well, it's very true what Mark just said. I mean, I can tell you, we are desperately waiting the entire tourist industry, our hotel industry, and especially the hot spring spa facilities along with resorts to open on the 29th of May. Will it be okay in regards of financial? Well, I can tell you for sure not for the first 2-3 months, because just to give you an example, in Austria, We have hundreds of millions of touristical nights, and just in summer, and we are now approaching summer, we have about 75, 76 million nights, and only 10% or 12% are being done by locals. So if you can't travel from Germany, from Swiss, from America, and so on, you know, to whom I'm going to open up my facilities. However, we desperately believe in the format that we have not only a duty in regards to financial results. Yes, certainly for the stakeholders and certainly for the shareholders, and this has to be taken into consideration, but as well for being a place where you offer, or where you are these well-being destinations for the guests, so they can come and, as Charles said, it boosts their immune systems. I think it's even more important than ever that we are building the front and being the kick in right away in the market to provide that to all the Austrians, and as soon as all the other ones can travel into our country as well, to give them these places where all the things you all just described can be found and can be supported. Because one thing is for sure in my life, that I strongly believe that our lifestyle diseases we are having, you know, and I'm not a doctor, as you all know, but we all know what I'm talking about, you know, not good food, less sleep, etc., etc. So if we are this primary front, this primary division in our industry, and balneology has a long tradition, as Mark explained it as well, and a big know-how heritage as well here in Europe. So we have to become these places. And if we think about the financial things, yes, we have to take them into consideration and do our mathematics and make sure that within a short period of time we can break even and, you know, go back to normal business. But on the other hand, we have this duty as well in regards to all our colleagues and to all our guests on this planet with all our properties. This is my strong personal believing. And don't forget what this COVID-19 crisis has now created in regards of depressions, anxiety, and so on, is going to be a big problem for the medical industry in the future as well. So, I mean, on one hand, we have to start, and why we don't start in our happiness industry, and to create an area where people can, you know, boost their immune systems back to where it should be.
Thank you, Tom. Charles, to start with you, but I'd like to hear also from Mark Hennebree on this. Social distancing is forcing venues to consider capping their operations with 50% occupancy. Clearly, with the businesses of hot springs and some large spas that count on volume, it can be hardly sustainable. Are you considering raising your prices?
Look, we're not considering raising our prices. We are fortunate on one side that the Australian government have introduced a program, what they call JobKeeper, and that is subsidising each person who is working for us who, because our businesses dropped considerably, they set a cap at it. If you've dropped more than 30%, then you are eligible, and we end up getting $750 per staff member. So in some way we're being subsidised to keep people employed, but it also means that we don't have to try and raise our prices particularly. We do expect, our expectation is to reduce our visitation number by 50%. But by the same token, what I was talking about before, we are wanting to introduce value-added experiences. So people aren't just coming for a bath, they're coming for a private bar. They're coming for private sauna sessions, they're coming for the private meal, and they're having a complete experience with other people around, but at safe distances. And it just means that instead of the average yield of our visitor can hopefully be nearly double. So if we are very fortunate, we might be able to have a facility that's half as full, but yielding the same amount. Now,
thank you,
Charles. We are in what they call uncharted waters. We don't really know until we open up to see the response. And we're getting mixed messaging all the time. The people are worried that people aren't going to turn up, and then we keep hearing people saying that they're just dying to get out there and come back, and what Mark Henneberry was saying, that people just want to come and hug somebody and just feel like they're coming back into the community, and the spas are a place where they can come back into the community.
Yeah, very rapidly before we have a quick conclusion, and I'm sorry, Mark, because it's my fault. I had planned on staying much longer with you guys, and there are so many questions that we have prepared together. Hopefully, with the editorial teams of Professional Beauty, there will be an article also including all the insights that you had prepared about bringing your business more digital. So 2 last questions for all of you. The first question is going to be roughly a number very quickly, because we're 6-7 minutes until the end of the session. What would you say, Mark, would be the approximate number of additional costs linked to safety post-COVID that you have to do with everything we've mentioned?
There's no simple answer to that, because you've got payroll, you've got disinfectants, you've got virus tests, you've got equipment that you're buying. You know, I do need to go back. You know, we're not putting up our prices. We will experience lower volume. We know that our profitability is going to take a hit in the short term, but we're here for the long term. Our business has been around for decades and decades and decades, and we will continue to be here for decades and decades and decades. And so we're in here for the long haul. You know, it's not about a short term. It's not about short term.
So you're reaching deep in your pockets to continue and serve the community and your guests.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow, it's very courageous. Charles, have you estimated the additional cost of safety in your procedures?
Look, we haven't got the same with Mark. It's fairly hard to judge it exactly. We have actually gone through and listed things that it could cost if we were giving people individual sanitisation. It would be, you know, $4 or $5 per person, where they have a little sanitizer bottle and so forth. If you gave them that, you could do extreme cleaning after every treatment, and that could cost up to $25 if you spent, you know, 25 to 30 minutes cleaning each room. If you did, depending on what level. So there are extremes that we can go to, but I think we don't have a specific thing. I think you're going to find, my guess, it's somewhere between 10 and 15% increase in the cost of delivery, just with extra staff and the extra service that we will have to provide. But it's again, it's a moving feast. We're still probably 4 weeks away from being able to open, 4 to 6 weeks away from being able to open again. So yeah. But
it's definitely something we have to take into consideration, because so many operators are thinking of reopening. And it's a little bit, for some, a flight by night. Others are really planning. Everyone has really to be agile with different scenarios. You mentioned low risk, mid risk, high risk guests wanting to see so many procedures in front of their eyes, done once, done twice, so that they feel completely safe. And then they can tell the story to their friends that it is safe. And then they come back with their friends and their family, because it's definitely part of your vision, Charles, in Australia, to bring this hot springs culture in people's minds, so that families gather together, multi-generation in one bath. Tom, have you assessed a number, and then we'll go into the more inspirational part of those 5 minutes that we have.
Well, let me open it twofold, if I may. And as I said, we are in this primary prevention. This is where I see our industry in the end of the day. But I strongly believe that we have to stop thinking in the way we did most probably in prior years. In my opinion, we have a revision. So whatever we thought linear in the past will be much more complex to understand and to foresee in forecasts and in business plans. I think we will move from efficiency to resiliency, which becomes much more important in the future. And adaptability is the word I said at the very beginning. I think this is the new credo. And on one hand, it means actually that anything goes, and if not now, then whenever. And if you ask me about precisely on costs, I strongly believe that taking into consideration then when we had the bank crisis, 2008, 2009, took about 4.5 years to go back to what we had prior. There are some experts who say it will be even worse now because it's not just the banks, it's the entire planet at the end of the day, and all branches being included. However, I strongly believe it will be similar, 3 to 4 years to be back where we had to be. And most probably because of the safety issues, till they become the new normal, I assume that between 1 and 2% of the GOP ratio usually we are doing in our properties will be the cost effect on the short run. However, taking into consideration that we are all, responsible for our business and for our guests and for our employees, there are some counter arguments which can soften that over the periods to come. And one for me is to give even more trust in our employees. What I mean with that is that you're gonna, get rid of this duplication of hierarchies, most probably, or duplication of checking somebody. Giving more trust in our people can, layer and soften the layers you have in your industries and be much more active on the guest, because these are the hands we will need at the end of the day. And on the other hand, automate whatever you can automate. For example, the dishwashing things or the waste management, whatever. There are so many things we maybe had now in the digitalization process to open up, on the one hand, more the soft factors to our guests, and on the other hand, to minimize the cost factors we will have to guarantee safety first.
Agreed. A touchless experience, like many hospitality groups are thinking, should still have a part of humanity, and touchless can mean frictionless as far as safety and step by step, but there's still a lot we can implement also with emotional intelligence. I don't want to run over the time when we're already 4 minutes over, but the people who know me know that usually it's impossible for me to tell a short story without a long story. To finish, and just last words, Mark, because thank you so much also, as we were having this conversation, talking with each other, Mark was very active also on the chat, sharing the links with his 10 hacks for relax, with his article. So thank you so much. You get to be the first one to share maybe your recipe for wellness. What makes, what could people do to improve, and what, makes your heart sing in this time?
Okay, well, I have a poem called The Recipe for Wellness, which is very simple, and it starts, it's bathe in beautiful water, prepare delicious food, make the most of every breath, dance through every mood, tend the soil beneath your feet, embrace sunshine from above, share your gifts with all the world, fill your life with love.
Thank you.
Very simple.
Thank you.
Wellness is simple. And it
he
starts
was
with bathing in beautiful water.
Absolutely.
I just want to, 2 points I just want to say that we haven't touched on. One is we underestimate the psychological benefit. We've talked a lot about the physical benefit and immune benefit of what we do. We've underestimated the psychological benefit, the forced mindfulness, the social connection, the social interaction is so important. And also giving people something positive they can do for their own health, so they're in control. So that's one point. And the other point is that we need to infiltrate the Western medical system. If we're going to be seen as essential services, the hydrothermal experiences can be put into aged care centres and fitness centres and in hospitals and other health centres, because they don't have the answer for viral infections. We do. And I think this is a real opportunity to educate the whole community, including our medical colleagues, that what we're offering isn't just something fluff and fun and open it after you've opened the cinemas. This is something that's really essential for the whole health of the community. I'd just like to stress that.
Thank you. Charles, I know you're a man of a few words, so a few words.
Certainly. I really wanted to emphasize that in this time that we've had, and really, I think it's coming up to 8 weeks since we had our shutdown. So it's only that short period of time, really. But I think we've all grown a lot. I think we've grown more connected in many ways. I can feel a change in our global hot springs community, just that community, a willingness to open up, a willingness to share, a willingness to realize that we are one, that this one little virus, this hidden force, which has actually thrown us all into a pile together. and we're all climbing out together, and we're actually all reaching down and pulling each other up and pulling each other out of this situation. And that really makes my heart sing, that the level of love and caring that is being shared at a global level, because we are globally connected, it is really inspiring. Our Hot Springs Initiative website, so we have the Global Wellness Institute Hot Springs Initiative, and on it we have a resources page, and we have been sharing quite a lot of information there, updating it, and there is quite a bit of information on there about immune boosting and activities that can be done at General Hot Springs. There's a whole lot of protocols that are on there and on the General Global Wellness Institute website. There's there's a lot of information that we're trying to share with the industry. But as you began saying, and in the it might have actually been when we went live, but really we are here to be reached out and connected to. So anybody who's on this live feed or who sees it, please do reach out, because we are a globally connected community and we all want to help each other.
Thank you very much, Charles. And as Mark, who's still very active, I mean, you're a total millennial, Mark. You're so active with the chat box. Is going to add the link to the Global Wellness Institute Hot Springs Initiative that you are co-chairing with Mark Hennebree. It's true that
Charles chairs that. Not me,
absolutely, Charles chairs it, and Mark is co-chair, absolutely, or vice chair. But anyway, I mean, only your mother can tell you apart. Mark, what gives you a reason to hope in this time? And then we'll hear from Tom.
Yeah, I mean, what gives me hope is similar to what my colleagues have been talking about. The more I see of the actions that people are taking around the world to find solutions, the more my faith in humanity is restored. And I think that power of community that I talked about earlier, that I think is the foundation for everything that we're doing, and will help us to adapt and move forward with all of this. We are resilient and we will adapt.
Thank you. Tom, final words from Australia to Austria, because I've seen so many bumper stickers in Austria that says, no, there are no kangaroos in Austria. What can be what can be your words of wisdom as we close?
Well, I think there's nothing much to add what my dear colleagues already said, but I think, again, understanding that with our services, we are able to provide this front, or we are able to support the fight against this lifestyle diseases, and offer this, I call it the primary prevention. And Mark Cohen said it so wisely. Yes, don't get me wrong. I think medicine and everything is in rehabilitation and hospitals, everything is important, but we have our part as well. And as Charles just said, in times like this, I think this is even more important, that we are there for everybody out there. And for me, this helps me to stay focused on the duties ahead of us. And as Mark Hennebree just said, these duties are going to be too challenged.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, all of you, Charles, Mark, Dr. Mark, Tom, for sharing that it's not just about the economic dimension, it's really about the empowerment that we can share right now, how we can educate and help navigate these uncharted waters, not just focusing on one pandemic, which is COVID, which is deadly, which is dramatic, which is scary, but there are so many other pandemics: obesity, poor nutrition, poor sleep, mental illness, non-communicable diseases. We could have gone on and on and on in this, because these are the choices that we can make in life to lead better lifestyles and to be happier people, using spas and hot springs and thermal water. So we can be, as a profession, we can make our profession more relevant, becoming the second wave of responders. Hats off to the healthcare doctors, the nurses, the doctors, the pharmacists, the people driving the ambulances. They've put their life on the line to save people. When we reopen, I truly believe it is time for our industry also to be the second wave of responders, to help people understand how they can be their own health managers, how they can be the artisans of their own well-being, and how we can grow, maybe with 5 pillars that we have with the World Wellness Weekend: better sleep, better nutrition, movement, mindfulness, and especially sense of purpose. So with that, thank you so very much to all of you. Thank you for Professional Beauty for putting this remarkable 3-day seminar and webinar conference with all the teams in the UK, GCC, South Africa, and India. Thank you so very much, and there's more to come, much more.
Thank you, one and all.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Jean-Guy.
We're off. That went well.